I'm Christopher Zweig, and today on CJ at the Movies, I got some new films, including the Christian sequel, I Can Only Imagine 2, another Baz Luhrmann movie about the king himself, Elvis Presley, and I paid tribute to Robert Duvall, who sadly passed away this week. Let's take a look, honey. Our first movie is How to Make a Killing, a dark comedy starring Glen Powell as Beckett Redfellow, a young man raised by a working-class mother who passed away and apparently was expelled from her rich family when she was pregnant with him in her teens. That means he was always part of that family but was denied his birthright. In fact, the only way he could be the last remaining heir is to exterminate the family members he never knew. You also get Zach Woods, Topher Grace, and Raph Law as his cousins, Bill Camp as his uncle, and Ed Harris as the grandfather, and you also have Margaret Qualley playing a femme fatale of sorts. When it comes to comedies either about the money game or murder, How to Make a Killing may not exceed the full-throttle level of The Wolf of Wall Street or the comedy of Horrible Bosses, but it does make you laugh, wince, and entertained at the same time. It was written and directed by John Patton Ford, who made one of Sundance's most successful crime dramas, Emily the Criminal. He steps it up a notch by tackling on a movie like this, a comedy that knows the targets and speaks with attitude and poetic values, and I like how Powell, whose last film Running Man was underappreciated, continues to play characters who wish to thrive in a complicated money game. So see it. Our next movie is I Can Only Imagine 2, the sequel to the Christian hit about Bart Miller, the leader of the Christian rock band Mercy Me, with the hit song I Can Only Imagine, and it also had Dennis Quaid playing his abusive and cynical father who finally saw the light before he passed away. John Michael Finley plays Bart once again while Quaid reprises his role in a flashback sequence, and Trace Atkins returns as Mercy Me's manager, and a new addition is Milo Ventimiglia as musician Tim Timmons, who finally gets the opportunity to go on tour with the band as the opening act. The main plot of the sequel regards Bart's firstborn son who has type 1 diabetes and has to take a daily blood sugar test, but when he becomes a teenager, played by Sammy Dell, he becomes more interested in singing than his daily requirements. I'm told that the real Tim Timmons had a terminal illness and was told that he would have about 5 years to live, but that was a long time ago as he's still alive today. Ventimiglia is the best thing about I Can Only Imagine 2 because of how he brings the courage and emotions to the character and tries to be a supporting one to both Bart and his son. The original movie was emotional and uplifting, but this sequel has to rely on the same formulas regarding the father and son. The music, dreams, and diabetes aren't well balanced here, so it's supposed to set things in motion, but it's all handled with cynicism. The sequel does promise you some emotional moments, but it doesn't promise you that it'll stand on its own, so skip it. Next up, Epic, Elvis Presley in concert, and when Baz Luhrmann was making Elvis, he intended to use unused footage from Elvis, That's the Way It Is, and Elvis on Tour for that film. The footage came without sound until it was restored and synced to existing audio sources, including a 45-minute audio recording of Elvis Presley talking about his life story, and whatever existing unused content has been placed in Luhrmann's follow-up. Watching Epic in IMAX, I was dazzled by the restoration of the unused footage. The colors that come in, reds, pinks, blues, and yellows and so forth, it all looks and feels clear, especially when we can see the sweat on the king's face. These clips and performances aren't scraped from the bottom of the barrel as an excuse to make this doc. They're pieces required to allow fans to see different angles of his music life, and my favorite regards him singing Oh Happy Day, which holds some high spirits. And Luhrmann directs both Elvis movies not to exploit the dead singer nor his fans, but to present his story with energy, music, and consistency. It opens this week in IMAX locations, and it will expand in regular formats next week, and I say see it. And our last movie is This Is Not a Test, a zombie movie that should be expelled from school. Olivia Holt from Hard Eyes plays a teenager who is only able to escape from her abusive father thanks to a zombie invasion, and she ends up with 4 other students at her high school. They consist of Cortia Moore, Chloe Avakian, Carson McCormick, and Froy Gutierrez, and they all barricade the doors and have their radio, which mostly tells them the same thing about seeking shelter. The film's guest star is Luke McFarlane, playing their English teacher who makes his way in the school, and he may or may not be infected, and he does have a gun with him, so how could these teens trust this guy? This is the most consistent part of the film, whereas everything else has to be infected with flat characters and cynicism. Written and directed by Adam McDonald and based on Courtney Summers' novel, the story deals with depression, survival, betrayal, and death, but it all feels weak and overexposed. I hate how the Holt character has to be the meek one who only rises to the occasion at the end, and at one point she's beaten up by one of the male survivors who blames her for someone's death. He kicks her over and over again until he gets restrained by the other survivors, and yet she doesn't fight back. I acknowledge that zombie movies need to do things differently. The 28 Years Later movies have, and We Bury the Dead has, but this one was too negative for my entertainment values, so skip it and let me know if this would be Zombie Kill of the Week. And now I pay tribute to Robert Duvall, who sadly passed away this week at the age of 95. When I was a kid, I first learned his name with family movies like Secondhand Lions and Kicking and Screaming. But the more I grew up, the more I appreciated him in movies like Apocalypse Now, The Godfather, and The Great Santini. And out of all the films he's acted in, the only one he's won the Oscar for was Tender Mercies, in
in which he played an alcoholic former country music star working and falling for a single mother, played by Tess Harper, while learning to regain his singing voice, and A Second Chance of His Daughter, played by Ellen Barkin. If you haven't seen or heard of this movie, I highly recommend it. It's a great one. He was also in the U.S. Army, whose rank was Private First Class. His political views were libertarian or conservative, and he had its moments of activism. His most recent case took place in February 2023 regarding a Warrenton Town Council meeting to oppose an Amazon data center, which he rejected but was approved otherwise. Robert Duvall has been a celebrated actor at one point, and then again at another point, and between the 2010s and 2020s with other gems like Widows and his final film The Pale Blue Eye, it was all clear that he was an ageless actor who delivered some of the best and most iconic performances of his filmography. And to me, he will always be remembered for helping making my childhood great, and never be forgotten for opening my eyes in my adulthood with The Godfather and The Great Santini. Robert Duvall, 1931 to 2026.
Recapping this week's new movies: thumbs up for How to Make a Killing, thumbs down for I Can Only Imagine 2, thumbs up for Epic, Elvis Presley in Concert, and thumbs down for This Is Not a Test. Well, those are the new movies I'm reviewing this week. I'm Christopher Zweig. Stay safe, and I'll see you at the movies. Thank you. Thank you very much.